there, my name's Sam and you're watching Sew That Sparkle with Sam, and this is episode 3 of my Sewing Bee Synopsis. And if you haven't caught up yet, then I suggest you go and catch up on BBC iPlayer and see me back here in a bit. See you later. Hello, I hope you've caught up now. My name's Sam, you're watching Sew That Sparkle with Sam, and this is my episode 3 sewing synopsis, which every week I do a little roundup of what I thought of the sewing bee, and we're on episode 3, South African week. And this episode I've decided to call One Kind because of something that one of the contestants said in the episode, and I just thought at the moment it feels appropriate to be kind, and One Kind sounds like a nice name for the episode. So, where should we start? So, South African week. First of all, Sarah didn't let us down this week with her gorgeous glittery outfit. I personally loved it. So it was kind of high-necked, but it was really glittery, sparkly sequin material, and then it had kind of a V, which was ruffled V down the front. I'll pop a picture up so you can see it. And she looked absolutely stunning, and it was like in a pale pink, and then she had pale pink trousers to match, and yeah, she looked very sparkly, the presenter that she is. So yeah, and also the other thing that I did notice, that some of the contestants, some of the outfits that they were wearing, I do love spotting kind of different fabrics that they're wearing and going, oh, I know where they got that fabric from, or I've got that fabric in my stash, or oh, I've seen that fabric. So I have to say that's been one of my highlights of, as the episodes have gone on, I've noticed that I've done that nearly every week of like, oh yes, I know where that fabric's come from. So I don't know about you, but it's something that I really enjoy about the episodes. And as it's going on, it's kind of nice to kind of pick out those different things that I really enjoy. So, pattern challenge. The first challenge was pattern challenge. Now, do excuse me if I keep looking down. It's just because I make lots and lots of notes, because otherwise I forget things. And so if I do keep looking down, glancing down, it's just to check that I've told you everything that I wanted to tell you. So, Banky Cuckoo was the special guest judge this week, and she is a fashion designer from Nigeria, and she kind of gave a real kind of wealth of knowledge, because I have to say some of the patterns and some of the materials that we're working with were not they weren't things that I'd seen before. I'd kind of heard of them, and I'd seen, I've certainly seen some of the outfits, particularly on red carpets and things, but I'd kind of not really had the knowledge and experience, and I really enjoyed the fact that we had her there to kind of really give us that knowledge, so that was nice. Pattern challenge, the first challenge was to make it was a kind of male tunic from Ghana, and it was called let me get this right, it's called a Batakari, and it's just kind of like a male tunic with a cutout neck, facing on the sleeves, and kind of bagged out pockets in the side, and it was made with kind of strips of fabric sewn together with godays. So godays are kind of triangular bits of fabric, so you get the triangular bits of fabric into the straight bits of fabric, and that's what gives you kind of the curve. You sometimes find it on the skirts. So that was the pattern challenge for this week. And I have to say, it was a tricky one for some of the contestants. I think from what I kind of gathered with the judging at the end, there was only really 2 of them that kind of nailed the pattern. All of the others kind of made one mistake or another in the pattern. So I think it was a really challenging pattern. They only have 3 hours, which I don't think is very long to make any pattern in 3 hours, considering that they had to sew their fabric together as well to make their actual fabric for their garment, and then all of obviously the facings and the pockets and stuff. So I thought 3 hours was tight on time, but yeah, they definitely found it a challenge. But it was really nice to see them working kind of with different materials and with patterns that I'd not seen before. So yeah, so I suppose the equivalent of something that I would wear is kind of like a smock top kind, you know, it's kind of like a in at the top, and then it kind of swung out. So yeah, it was really interesting to watch and had quite challenging aspects of it. One of the things was that the neck facing and the opening, you kind of pop on. There was no pattern pieces. It was literally just the fabric, and then kind of you just kind of pop it on. There was obviously pattern pieces for the facing, but they didn't kind of tell you where to mark it, so it was quite difficult. I felt quite difficult to kind of figure out where it all needed to be, so it all lined up properly and it sat nicely on the shoulders. And as I said, quite a few of them had a few problems, and they all looked a little bit like Ribena berries at the end, because the indigo dye in the fabric kept coming off on all the contestants' fingers. So by the end of the challenge, they all had purple fingers, which I found quite amusing. So yeah, it was it was a neat construction. It was a new construction for me, so it was good. This week, just to let you know, I've changed the way I'm in my descriptions. For each challenge, I've actually put where people finished for each challenge. So if you want to have a look down in the show notes, I have actually put the placings for the pattern challenge and the transformation challenge, and then obviously for the made to measure, I'll pop pictures up and show you my opinions, and because obviously there was only a judgment on who went home and who was the garment of the week, so they didn't actually place those, but I have put the placement for the other two challenges in the show notes. I'm going to do that going forward. I hope you find that useful. I've had a few kind of bits of feedback on these videos, so if you find that useful, and if you find anything else useful, let me know and I'll see what I can do. So yes, so Fauve, who is fast becoming she is the best storyteller, and of all of the contestants, she's definitely the person I'd like to go out on a night out with. I think we'd have the best fun. So it's fair to say that she really struggled with the pattern challenge, and also Mia, the other young lady, she really struggled with this pattern challenge as well. And as I said, really the only two that didn't struggle with it were the two that came first and second, and that was Asmaa and Vicki. And they seemed to be the only two that really nailed the challenge. Everyone else did have a few struggles with that challenge. So all of the facings of the fabric was plain fabric, and then the main fabric was the strips of the traditional fabrics. And that was the other nice thing, that they showed you a reel in the show about how those fabrics are woven. It was just really interesting to watch. I learned a lot in episode 3. So yeah, so that was challenge 1. Sorry, it's a beautiful sunshiny day today, and I keep getting distracted by the sun outside. I do apologise. So challenge 2 is the transformation challenge, and I felt that this week the transformation challenge was less of a transformation challenge and more of a draping challenge, because they just got a whole sheet of fabric. It wasn't something that they had to change from one thing to another thing. It wasn't raincoats to swimwear or anything like crazy like that. It was just a sheet of tie-dye, traditional tie-dye fabric, and then and it was quite a stiff structural fabric, and they so it was more of a draping challenge than a transformation challenge. But that I found really interesting, because I work in a fabric shop, and so we have to drape fabrics onto mannequins quite often, and it's something that I'm not great at doing. I'm learning a lot. One of my colleagues, Carmen, she's only 17, bless her, and she is really good at draping. she is fabulous. So whenever she does draping in the shop, I watch her really, really carefully. And I've started to kind of dabble in it. I've learned a lot from her. And so I found that those skills really interesting. And actually, I found that different people that are kind of better at the pattern construction struggled a little bit more with the draping, and then other people shone with the draping. So that's another reason to like the transformation challenge, because I think different skills are allowed to come out, and that was really interesting. So yeah, it did make really good shapes. The people that struggled with this challenge were people that tried to make it like a pattern challenge and tried to kind of cut out pattern pieces and stick them together and make a top and add a skirt and kind of do all of those things. And Maria really struggled with this challenge, and Postman Tony, oh yeah, my Postman Tony, he really struggled with this challenge. And yeah, but the ones that went with it and just kind of freed their kind of creative skills and just draped, they were the ones that did a much better job. And Lizzie came top of that, and I have to say her draped dress was beautiful, and Mia's was beautiful as well. In fact, there was quite a few of them. I'm not going to say I would have worn them because I think we might have had a few accidents with the things going wayward if I'd have worn any of those dresses. Let's just say they weren't particularly supportive. But they were very beautiful. So that was challenge 2. The final challenge 3, is the made to measure challenge. This is the one that they get to practice at home. Although I don't know whether any of you noticed last night, but normally the transformation challenge, they get between 6 and 8 hours for the, sorry, not for the transformation challenge, for the made to measure challenge. They get between 6 and 8 hours. Now, last night they got 4 hours. Now, you might say it was a simpler challenge because what they had to make a traditional BouBou, which is like, it's an occasional wear kaftan, for want of a better description. So it's a traditional garment worn by men and women in West Africa when for a special occasion. Well, they can wear it casually and also for a special occasion, but they did want an occasion wear BouBou. And so it is quite a simple, free-flowing garment. But 4 hours to make, you know, some of them were using very kind of difficult fabrics to work with. And I thought 4 hours, and I have to say, some of them struggled with that time. And I think if they'd perhaps had an extra hour, there might have even been a different result, because I think a lot of them, you know, time was a real issue, but they all had the same amount of time, so it was definitely fair. I just felt that there's no way that I would have been able to have done it in 4 hours. I think I would have just about cut out my pieces by then. But hey ho, we're all different, aren't we? So yes, so a BouBou is quite an extravagant garment worn by men and women, and they all kind of made their own take on it. Some of them kind of went, that was, oh actually I think that was part of the challenge as well. It had to tell a story. That was the other part of the challenge. So they had to create a BouBou, they had to create this garment, but it also had to tell a story. And this is where, again, where Fauve came into herself, because if anyone can tell a story, it's definitely her. And she made me laugh out loud last night. So that was fantastic. So I'm just going to go through them in the order that I've written them down in my notebook. So the first one that I'm going to talk you through is Tony Postman, and I'll put his pictures up here. So he used quite a kind of psychedelic type fabric with a flounce. It's just a piece of fabric, a flounce that went all the way down the front. But because his fabric was so psychedelic and so busy, the flounce just got lost. Basically, he just didn't have a fat enough flounce. If his flounce had been flouncier, it kind of would have worked, but it wasn't. So that was a shame. Also, the other mistake that I think that Tony made was I don't think he got the brief And it's a horrible thing to say, really, because I hate criticising the sewers, because in that situation I would be exactly the same, but I'm just kind of giving you my honest opinion. And I just don't think that he really understood the brief, because it was meant to be a free-flowing kind of not really fitted garment, and he's fitted his model beautifully kind of at the bust and at the waist, and then it did kind of like flow out, but that wasn't what everyone was expecting. So that one didn't quite work, but I'll pop a picture in and you can see for yourself. And then Tony W, the other Tony, he kind of did a billowy, and it had like a blue underneath with like a feather chiffony kind of affair over the top. I have to say, we've got some fabric in the shop that does that by itself. It's like a brocadey fabric, and it looked, when it was actually finished, it looked like a brocade fabric. He'd done a really good job on that, and it was very loose and flowing, and I'll pop that one up on there. I thought that was very beautiful, suited his model really nicely, told the story that it needed to do. If anything, for me, it was a bit too simple. You know, the fabrics were nice, but it was a little bit too simple for me. And then Lizzie decided, she had been to West Africa before, and she you could tell she was really up for this challenge. She'd really thought about the story, she'd thought about kind of vintage garments that she'd had from Africa, and she was kind of putting those same muted colour tones into her garment, and she decided to do some colour blocking, which I have to say, she did colour blocking with French seams, and she did a beautiful job. I mean, the lines were... And then she did like a channel down the front, and I'm still not entirely sure how it kind of gathered all up, but she seemed to be pulling something, so she must have put some kind of gathering tape or something in, and then it all kind of gathered up. And again, I'll show you some pictures that you can see, and you can see for yourself. So on to Asmaa. Now, Asmaa took some inspiration from her own country, from Iran, and they have a similar garment, so she kind of took that as her story, and then made this beautiful kind of chiffon-y, it had chiffon lace. I mean, Asmaa always makes hard work for herself. She always picks what I would consider really difficult materials to work with, but it's what she works with all the time, so she probably doesn't find those as tricky as I would using them. But I have to say, when they started kind of discussing what she was going to make, I was thinking, oh my god, 4 hours, she's got to baste all of those layers on. And she did struggle with the time. Again, if she'd had another hour, I think, you know, it would have been absolutely stunning, and it was still stunning. And I'll pop a picture up here. It was all kind of very glittery, lots of chiffon, looked beautiful on her model, but it just wasn't finished to Asmaa's usual high standards. But it was a very nice garment. Then there was Lauren. She had some beautiful fabric, and she had beautiful stories throughout, I have to say, Lauren. And her mum has an obsession with fans, like, you know, the fans that keep you cool. Thought that was a bit odd. Or maybe it was just me. But she got this beautiful fabric that had fans on and feathers and diamantes. She, you know, Lauren totally went for it. And yeah, and it was kind of made the story was all about family and her mum, and kind of, yeah, and it did look really nice. And I'll pop a picture up there, nice and bright and colourful, and definitely felt very traditional. And then Fauve. Now, Fauve went completely differently to a lot of the other contestants. So instead of picking kind of those kind of wax print inspired type fabrics, she went very plain. So she did a shocking pink. It was stunning, and it was a silk georgette. Let me just check, what was it called? No, it was a crepe satin, which I've worked with crepe satin before, and it's an absolute nightmare. It slips and slides everywhere. And I have to say, the way she handled that fabric was superb. Not a pucker in sight when she'd finished it. It was absolutely stunning. And she made it, she said that it was kind of like an occasion, like a wedding guest dress. And I'll pop a picture up of there. And I have to say, that was up there for one of the winners for me. That was, you know, if I was judging, that would definitely have been a contender for the winner. And considering that Fauve didn't do particularly well in the first 2 challenges, I think she saved herself with that one. So that was really good. And then Maria again chose tricky fabrics, which she again did a really good job with. Even though they were really tricky, she worked with them really, really well. I think for me, a mistake that Maria made was she mixed, and I think Asmaa pointed this out as well. She had gold braiding, and then she had diamante braiding, and then I think she had another trim as well, and she put them all together. And this is from me. There is such thing as too much trim, and it didn't work, but it looked very beautiful. She put it together and she sewn it really, really nicely, and I'll pop a picture up there. And then there was Mia's. I loved Mia's. I've just started. I just think I really love Mia. She reminds me a little bit of my daughter. She's a bit younger than my daughter, but she's kind of got that aura around her, and she's just she just went in there, you know. She's using fabrics that she hasn't used very often. She's not been sewing very often, and she's just going for it, and I just really love it. And what she made, I thought, was really beautiful. She had like an elasticated version, so even though it didn't have to fit on any of the curves of the model, it did have to fit to sit properly, and she'd done that perfectly. It had like beautiful trees and then gold stars on the front. It was very over the top, very flamboyant, but it fit the brief perfectly. And she called it a puffy ruffly, or a ruffly puff. And that was like the sleeves and the bottom. So I think she said that the sleeves were ruffly puff and the bottom was a puffy ruffle. So there you go. That was going to be the title of episode 3, Ruffly Puff. But then I decided that one kind sounded better and more appropriate for today. So yes. So hers gave me kind of vintage caftan kind of feel vibes, and I'll pop a picture up there so you can see and make an opinion for yourself. And then Vicki. So Vicki was the only sewer that decided to have a midi length one. So most of the other ones went to the ground. Hers was kind of midi length, and her extra challenge was that she pattern matched exactly her quite complicated fabric, and it was like a celebration of women fabric, and it was beautiful. Again, classic Vicki, did a really good job, was executed perfectly, pattern matching perfect. And it was nice, and I would have probably worn that one. Actually, out of all of them, that was probably one that I would have worn. It's very nice. It was kind of cinched in with a belt. I think the belt was her grandma's, or maybe I think the belt was her grandma's. So yeah, it had a nice story to it. As I said, the story was a celebration of women, and it came together really nicely. And again, put the picture up here. So last but by no means least was Matthew's. So Matthew did one for a man, and in Matthew's classic, Matthew decided to add a harness to his BouBou, which I have to say, I didn't mind, but I agreed with Patrick that when it was actually on the model, I think he missed a trick. If he was gonna go for that look, it needed to be a collar harness rather than where it was, because I think that would have had more impact and kind of told more of the story. But other than that, I thought it was very nice. It suited his model really nicely, and I definitely got kind of West African vibes. I've seen West African men wearing those kind of colours and that kind of feel. So in that way, he definitely hit the brief. So, and I'll pop that one up there so you can see and you can make your mind up. So yeah, in 4 hours, I have to say, they all did really, really well. So this week, the garment of the week went to Lizzie. And I'll pop this up here so you can get a proper look at it. I have to say, looking at it again, it kind of gave me a bit kind of parachute-y vibes. And I think that was just because of the colours that she used, but I did really like it. And I agreed. I always agree with the judges. I think the judges know best. They were there. They were the ones that were there. They saw it. They saw all the finishing. So I'm never going to disagree really with the judges very much. Was it my favourite? Probably not. Did I think she deserved to win it? Yeah, it was, it was great. It was a lovely, it hit the brief. And it was a lovely sew. And she was delighted that she won. So I was delighted for her. And then sadly, and I have to say with a really heavy heart, because now the weeks are going on, it's harder and harder and harder to say goodbye to the contestants that are going. But this week it was Maria that went home. And I think really she was judged on her first 2 challenges because she really didn't do very well in the first 2 challenges. She did redeem herself a little bit in the 3rd challenge and she did make a really nice garment. But I have to say, I have to agree with the judges, over that episode, she was the poorest of all of them. And she just didn't have a great week. But she's fantastic sewer and I wish her all the best. So yes, so that was episode 3. I feel like I've really rushed through this episode, so I'm sorry if I have. As I said, the sun is shining and I think I'm just keen to get outside and get going. But I'm really, really looking forward to next week. So next week, they're doing something that they've done before on the Sewing Bee, and I have to say it's normally my favouriteest episode. Is that the right word? Favourite? Yeah, it's normally my most favourite episode. And it is Reduce, Reuse and Recycle Week. And I love it because I do love the creativity that sparks. If you've got, it's all very well, if you're a dressmaker and you've got a pattern and you've got 3 meters of fabric, well, anyone can make a dress. I mean, you might argue that, but if you've got a good enough pattern and good enough instructions and enough time, whereas I find find something, amend it and reuse it and repurpose it, adds a different element to normal dressmaking. So I'm really looking forward to that one, and I hope you are looking forward to that one too. And just as always, at the end of my video, I've been doing a little bit more to my sweepstake prize. So if you're interested, I will just play that out with some music at the end. So if you enjoy listening to this kind of thing and you want to follow me on my sewing journey, please give me a like because it really, really helps my channel. And if you would think about subscribing and you'd like to subscribe, please do so because that really helps me out. So have a lovely week. Enjoy the sunshine if you've got it. And don't forget to sparkle. Take care. Bye for now.